Kyrie Irving is set to make his Nets debut on Wednesday. And I am here to tell you that this is a great idea by the Brooklyn Nets.
So the Nets aren't going to have one team for the rest of this NBA season. They're going to have two.
Welcome to Order on the Court. I'm Chris Mannix. He is Howard Beck, and this is my opening statement. Well, Howard, Kyrie Irving is set to make his Nets debut on Wednesday when Brooklyn travels to Indiana. And I am here to tell you that this is a great idea by the Brooklyn Nets. Short term, the Nets need bodies. Like every other team in the league, they have been ravaged by COVID. So adding an all-NBA caliber point guard for the cost of nothing is good. And long term, I think Kyrie Irving should stick around. I know there's going to be questions about developing chemistry with this team. But what we've seen from all the COVID issues teams have dealt with is that chemistry is no longer a big-time variable. Every team has chemistry problems because of this new Omicron variant that is ravaging the league right now. I think the Nets should bring him back, keep him around when everybody gets healthy, and start the pressure campaign on the city of New York. Now, this is not a anti-vax argument, Howard, but the fact that the city of New York has said that an unvaccinated Kyrie Irving can't play, but that the 3% of NBA players that are unvaccinated can come in and play is ridiculous. So I would like to see the Nets say to Eric Adams, the incoming mayor, say, look, if you want to make this a mandate, fine, but have it apply to everybody. Have it be fair. Otherwise, let Kyrie play.
Well, Chris, if I may retort, listen, I'm not here to argue about whether the city of New York has made the right policy or not. The law is what it is. I'm not even here necessarily to argue whether Kyrie Irving should change his stance, although obviously he should. This isn't even about whether the Nets should be bending the principles and standards and team culture that they seemed to be emphasizing at the time that they decided not to play Kyrie Irving at the beginning of the season. I'm going to put that aside too. Let's just talk about the basketball. This team has taken 3 months to establish who it is without Kyrie Irving. And now suddenly, at the near midpoint of the season, they're going to throw him back into the mix, but not even at 100% of the time. They're going to play him on the road and not play him at home because they cannot. And that fact is not going away. That barrier is not changing. And so the Nets aren't going to have one team for the rest of this NBA season. They're going to have two. Their road team, which features 3 superstars, including Kyrie Irving, and a home team that only includes Kevin Durant, James Harden, and a bunch of role players who will do their best to readapt to roles when Kyrie Irving is not playing. That's not good for team chemistry. That's not good for cohesion. And Chris, that is certainly not good for the Nets when they get to the playoffs and have to play half of every series without one of their best players, including potentially a decisive Game 7 at Barclays Center.
Yeah, but I'm glad you brought up the Game 7 at Barclays Center. Look, the Nets, their offensive rating with Kyrie, James Harden, and Kevin Durant last year was around 119. In the playoffs, that offensive rating, albeit in limited minutes, went up to about 130. They are a juggernaut offensively when these 3 guys are in the rotation together. And you talk about how, well, what if there's a decisive Game 7, maybe in the NBA Finals, that the Nets are going to have to play without Kyrie Irving? How many teams are taking this Brooklyn team to a Game 7? Like, how many series can this Brooklyn team win, even with the restrictions, in 6 games? I think there's going to be a lot, especially in the Eastern Conference playoffs. So to me, that's a problem to address down the road. I'd roll the dice, and when everybody's healthy in February or March, I'd say, Kyrie, we're going to keep going down this path, and let's see what the city of New York does when the Brooklyn Nets are in the playoffs and they have a mandate that's on the books that is just, in my mind, simply unfair to Kyrie Irving.
Well, it may well be unfair to Kyrie Irving and to the Nets, and it's fine to point out the inconsistency in not allowing Kyrie to play while road players, visiting players who might not be vaccinated are allowed to play. That's all fine. None of that matters. What really matters to the Nets is, are they going to win more often with this version of their team? And can they sustain and continue to have success when they are having to change their lineup all the time? And it may not be a decisive Game 7, Chris. It might be a decisive Game 5 at Barclays Center. that they're playing for their lives without Kyrie Irving? We don't know. And this is not a juggernaut team, by the way, in either version of it, because the East is very competitive. The Bucks could knock them off. The Miami Heat at full strength could knock them off. Heck, the surging Chicago Bulls are a threat too. So I don't think the Nets have much room for error regardless.
Now, got a talent like Kyrie Irving, I say bring him back. All right, give me your closing statement.
My closing argument is simply this. The Nets established what they wanted to do this season, and it was without Kyrie Irving. They didn't do that enthusiastically. They did what they thought they had to do, but they did it in part because of principle having to do with COVID and vaccinations. They did it in large part, because of basketball concerns and the inconsistency that having Kyrie Irving only for road games would bring. And what they've done halfway through this campaign is decided to throw all of that out the window for the sake of expediency. And yes, the Nets did have some concerns with all of the quarantine players over the last few weeks, but they are basically whole now. There's really no urgency, no reason to bring Kyrie Irving back as a part-time player. I think the Nets are making a mistake.